the English Test summer has come to a bit of an abrupt end. So probably a good time to sit down, calm down and reflect. And I can't think of a calmer, more reflective friend of mine than Mr. Daniel Norcross. Dan, how are you?
Oh, I'm feeling very calm and reflective today, actually, as it goes. You've caught me a normally calm and reflective man at his most calm and indeed reflective.
Comfortably numb, or is that for later?
Well, I know I am actually quite comfortably numb for reasons of excess, brought on by, as you say, the abrupt end to the Test series, which meant I had 5 days free out of nowhere, which meant that the house guests that I thought I wasn't going to see anything of, I have seen plenty of, and seen plenty of them well into the night. And, so I think it's probably helping my reflective mood.
So let's reflect. And the Test year, and I'm not going to go into detail, but it has been the transition out of COVID. We started the year with overseas tests behind closed doors and stop-start with COVID and the rest of it. And then we came to these shores and gradually we saw crowds getting bigger and bigger until we were up at Headingley and indeed the Oval for incredible scenes. And your dulcet tones were there all the way.
Yes, I was quite fortunate this year. I've done every Test match in some capacity or another, apart from the Lord's Test. Well, although I did do a bit of that for SEN as well. So yes, I've witnessed all of it, and I don't really feel that I know anything more at the beginning of the year than I did at the end. Well, with two exceptions. I do know that Joe Root is approximately 2.5 times more productive than the next nearest England batter in the entire team and squad and country generally. And that Ollie Robinson is very good at Test cricket, which I didn't know at the start of the summer. So I've got those takeaways. I've got various other ones, I suppose, have been, you know, at the beginning of the season, you receive the fixtures. And I don't know how you go about it, Moots, but I first look for all the Test matches, all the women's internationals, the county championship fixtures to see if there are any where it's going to be warm or if I'm just going to be wrapped up in a tartan rug with a hot thermos flask. T20 finals day. And then there was the addition of the 100. I thought, well, where's that going to go? How's it going to fit in? And so I guess what I saw was that there was this massive, formless, blobby mess that I couldn't keep in my head. And that's kind of, to me, how the summer's played out. It's been a formless, massive, blobby mess. And I haven't been able to really keep, even though I've been there for lots of it, I've not really been able to keep track of it. I mean, the county championship, you and I are both huge fans of the county championship. But your side is basically dead and buried if they play out a couple of draws and lose one early on. And so that sort of like takes that away from it. But then I can't be quite sure who's actually doing well. The T20 happened in a sort of blur, didn't it? And then it stopped. And then it started all over again. It was really exciting. But then it has to stop again while we wait for finals day. And in between times, I was going to watch Test matches. So I found it a dissatisfying summer, but a very oddly quick one, because I was always having to concentrate on something new. And before I knew it, I looked up and it was bloody September. And as I say, almost none the wiser for it.
I suppose that's the one thing about the 100, forget everything else. But the one good thing that I thought about it was fast-paced, it was all in one go, and you could follow it, and it was all concluded in a block, and that was that.
I mean, I agree with you. I think that was the one bit of the summer that was most made sense in a way, really, because for all the reasons you said. The other part of it was that I really enjoyed the women's team aspect of it, so that kept me going, because I thought the men's tournament was slightly overhyped. I didn't think the quality was particularly high, and there were very good reasons for that. You know, a lot of Australian players missing, no West Indian players to speak of, really, apart from Carlos Brathwaite. And because of COVID, there just weren't enough, I guess, overseas stars. So while there were some very exciting games in the men's 100, it was, in terms of quality, quite low. But the women's tournament, and my team was the Oval Invincibles, and I found myself rooting for them. I couldn't believe that I would start the season. I thought, well, they're not called Surrey. But sure enough, on the very first day, Maddie Villiers hit that six to basically win the game pretty much. And I suddenly realised that I was an Oval Invincible super fan. And overnight, which shows the fickle nature of sporting loyalty, doesn't it? But yeah, I got into it. I did get into it. And I think one of the reasons I got into it was that the things that I thought would fail were the things that succeeded. And the things I thought would be interesting didn't really come to pass. So I was quite kind of fascinated by it. But what it did do was, because of it being played in this block, it meant that England arrived at the right selection for their test team by accident, really, because there were no county championship games anywhere near it, for them to be able to bring in players when other players had losses of form. And let's face it, every country's teams have losses of form. Ajinkya Rahane had a terrible loss of form this summer for India. It happens to every country. And the advantage of being at home is that you're able to pick a player, because you haven't taken a squad. You can pick a player from the entire domestic setup. And because England selectors had nothing to go on, they basically picked batters eventually who were the right age, a bit older. So at the start of the summer, they began with the youngest batting lineup, I think, in their history. I think I'm right in saying. And then, of course, by the last test match, or the penultimate test match that was played, they had a really balanced looking age group, actually, with Hasiba Mead and Burns in there, but Milan coming in, and Bairstow being in there, Root and Pope. So they actually got there, but more by accident than design. And I guess what I'm scratching my head over is what on earth made them think that they got the right format of team selection back in June, when again they were sort of forced into difficult decisions because they decided that if you'd been out the IPL, then you couldn't get selected, which made for some weird anomalies, like Chris Wokes not getting selected earlier on, in June when he was fit, because he'd notionally been at the IPL. They'd only been at the IPL for 3 or 4 weeks. Then they'd had 4 weeks off. I mean, it didn't sort of make any great sense to me at all. They weren't in these controlled bubbles that were really problematic. So they'd sort of made these decisions in advance, much like they had actually in January and February and March, where England's selection was dictated more by the laudable desire to keep their players fresh from the awfulness of these bubbles, more than it was by selecting the right players. But it meant you got weird anomalies like Moeen Ali coming in, playing one game, looking a lot more effective on those pitches than Dom Bess, and then flying home. Johnny Bairstow just finding some form, and then the moment the ball was coming off his bat nicely, oh no, off you go. So the disruption to England's team was continuous, really, from the beginning of the calendar year, virtually through to the end. And it was only when they were sort of forced into making pragmatic selections that I think they actually got the right side. But by that stage, if the 5th test match had been played, would Jimmy Anderson and Ollie Robinson have played? Because they'd bowled over 160 overs each in those 4 games. And those games were played back to back. So, we were asking an enormous amount of our cricketers. And I think that's what I mean, really, that the schedule has, if it doesn't change, then what you'll see is every time England take to the field, they'll not have their best team out because they won't have the luxury of picking their best players.
Well, you mentioned about Jimmy Anderson, and I've just read this morning that he's not part of the Lancashire team for next week's final county championship game because he's basically exhausted after the test summer. There's a
as they say, as a Monty Python sketch goes, he's tired and shagged out after a long squawk. Just basically what's happened to poor old Jimmy. Yeah, it's well. I hope mercifully not. I think so. On that bombshell.
Yeah. But the argument has always been, we need to play more county. These guys need to play more county cricket. They need to. But if they're being forced to play so much international cricket, you can't do both. You really can't. So.
No, but that's a function, though, isn't it, Moots, of playing 5 test matches in 6 weeks. And this was, again, quite baffling to me because India were in the country from June.
Yeah.
to play the World Test Championship final. And once we knew that that was happening, you'd have thought, and I know it's a bit more difficult in England because the clubs sell their tickets much earlier. So Old Trafford had already sold, its tickets, and so you've got a bit of a logistics nightmare. But just looking at that schedule, the Test series should have started earlier, frankly. There was a white ball blob in the middle that Sri Lanka and Pakistan that didn't really make a lot of sense. We're quite a long way away from a men's World Cup. If the India series had been able to start 2 or 3 weeks earlier, you'd have had test matches in July. But part of the reason they didn't want to do that was because they wanted to keep marquee players to play at the beginning of the 100, which was a very wrong-headed way of thinking about it. Because, nobody's going to fall in love with the Northern Superchargers because Ben Stokes plays 2 games and then disappears for the rest of the tournament, because that was the imagining that it was going to be at the start of the year. So I think that, these problems are solvable, but you've got to get, when a side comes over like India, and they were in England, as I say, from the beginning of June until the middle of September, how we couldn't have found a way to play 5 test matches, but with adequate gaps between them, so that, in the old days when we used to watch, sounds like being very old and miserable here, but there was always a week and a half between a test, except when it was 2.5 weeks because of the open golf. So there were always gaps in the schedule that allowed sides, fast bowlers, to recover. And 5-day test match cricket with no rest days, with 3 days off in between, and one of those days is spent travelling, is grueling.
But to your point, Dan, about jumping between formats, that's a problem that's not solvable at the moment, is it? You've got test match, you've got county championship, you've got 1 day, you've got Vitality Blast, you've got the 100. There's no way you can have those blocked like the 100 was and satisfy everything.
I agree. I don't think you can. There are various ideas people have had. The Royal London One Day Cup coming earlier, much earlier, like April, much as the old Benson Hedges Cup used to do. I know, freezing cold, but some matches have got to be played in April. It's because we live We've been sent so far away from the equator by the fact that every other country our ancestors lived in kicked us out, sent us further and further into cold climates, that we can't complain. It's the sins of our ancestors for this mood.
Afghanistan's nicest time of year.
We are where we are. But look, there are sort of little tweaks you can do. If the counties insist on having a T20 competition as well as there being 100, then you've got to sort of abandon the notion that you can have an overseas pro come and stay with you and do the whole competition. Really, you've got to play county championship and T20 and do that sort of on a rolling weekly basis. That's one way, I think, of helping to solve that crisis. Another one is to reduce the amount of 4-day cricket. Do we really want to do that? Other countries don't play anything like as much as we do. You look at Australia, they have 10 first-class matches, don't they, before a final? It seems to work perfectly well for them. So that might be a possible tweak. But the real issue is that we've got two short-form tournaments. We've got the 100 and we've got the T20. So until that's resolved and we reduce, maybe you can do it by reducing the number of T20 blast games, but the counties feel that they need that to generate their own money. And yet at the same time, the 100 has been promising the money, it's being generated elsewhere. So we've got this kind of horrible, as I keep saying, formless blob that can only be resolved by reducing the amount of cricket that's played. And it's not in anyone's interest to do that. It's not in broadcasters' interest. It's not in the county's interest, but it is in the players' interest.
You got any thoughts for the upcoming will they, won't they Ashes?
I do. And my thoughts are, they're partly driven by what George DeBella's written. He's got his ear very close to the ground. I know he has very good contacts, within the England setup. And the current feeling is that a lot of them just do not want to face what is 4 months in bubbles, and most of that really away from their families. The problem is the hard quarantine in Australia. That's really the issue, because if they could get the families out there, much as the Indians had their families out here in relatively low restrictions, actually. You know, people were asked to sort of live carefully, but didn't stop them going out and about and eating outdoors. I think if you take into account a World T20 running straight into an Ashes, and then the families having to do 2 weeks of hard quarantine, that's tough, especially when they've got small children. So you've got, quite understandably, you know, wives railing against the prospect of having to have like a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old in a hotel room for 2 weeks, not being able to go anywhere, you know, while her husband's playing cricket on the telly in the first test or something. And then after that, there's even more cricket because they go through into the West Indies and beyond. So my strong sense is that as long as Australia maintains A, the hard quarantine, and B, the threat of lockdowns, which may dissipate slightly with their vaccination program picking up, we're going to see an England side go out there, but it will not be anything like the best England side. And given how tough it was going to be for the best England side to be competitive in Australia, I think it could be a pretty one-sided series.
Does that mean that second string commentary teams will be sent out there?
No, well, I'd love that to be the case, obviously, because it would give me a chance, wouldn't it? But we don't know. I mean, the uncertainty is obviously gripping the world, isn't it? But it's especially acute around Australia and New Zealand because they've maintained an approach of trying to get to zero COVID, and to do that, it's worked in some cases for them. New Zealand has had it's been very positive for them. Their economy's been able to keep going. They've kept COVID away from their shores, but because that's their mindset, we don't know. The BBC doesn't know. Sky won't know, or whoever does cover the Ashes, whether or not they've got to pay for 8 people to be in quarantine for 2 weeks, where they're effectively useless. And so suddenly the costs ratchet up.
Yeah. And
when you're dealing with license fee payers' money and stuff like that, that's not a good place to be in. So, look, I can't tell you any more than I know, which is that we genuinely don't know. And we're just watching the space really acutely. The last Ashes, I found out I was going, I think, in early July. So where are we now? We're in mid to late September. And I wouldn't expect us to have a clearer picture for probably another 6 weeks yet.
Yes, it's all very distressing and worrying. Did I see you pull on your whites this summer for the Taverners?
Yeah, what I did is I've actually put them on twice this summer. No, 3 times.
Wow.
I was giving out, 2 LBWs for single figure scores, but a dashing 35 off about 28 balls in President's Day at my club. Which was very gratifying, actually, because the ball only, well, let me think, out of those 35 runs, I think only 31 of them came off the outside edge. So there was quite a nicely struck boundary off a full toss down the leg side. It's something that resembled the middle of the bat. But I am president of my club, so I think I was probably being fed joke bowling to make me feel better. I felt terrible the next day, though. Crikey Moses.
Yeah.
I could barely walk. All it is it's standing there and occasionally wafting a bat, isn't it? But my shoulders were buggered.
Yeah.
I'm out of shape.
Now, Zero Ducks Given, which is the only UK cricket podcast that's better than 98 Out, according to the voting public. I know there was not much in it.
Well, it's better. It's a very hard one to quantify. We appeal to people who enjoy chaos and mayhem. So essentially, Toby Tarrant, Stephen Finn, myself, and occasionally a guest. We had Bumble and we had Graham Fowler in the last couple of weeks. So we're mostly limited to left-handed Lancastrians who scored double hundreds against India. Does make our gene pool rather small. We gather, and I try to wind up Finney. My favourite wind up of him was when we got Bumble on. I'd been saying to Finney, bowlers, they get away with murder. They bowl all this filth down the leg side. It goes for 4 leg byes. It should go on the bowler's analysis. He was furious. So I primed David Lloyd about this. And David was just brilliant, Bumble. He just goes, oh, yeah, Finney, I've heard from Les Battersby. Les Battersby at the ICC. He says they're seriously thinking about it. And Finney had a huge drop while we were recording. He says, if that happens, I'm going to retire. And there was effing and jeffing and heaven knows what else. So, yeah, really, it's just an opportunity for me and Toby to wind up a current player. And it can get a bit loose because we record it in the evening when we're slightly more refreshed. And it seems that the episodes that make the least sense are the ones that the listeners like most. So I think it could just be that our listenership is sort of chaotic, drunken mass. And they like to see their views reflected.
Yeah, that's a very good Bumble impression, by the way.
It really was.
Thank you. We're working on it.
With some nice knitwear to match as well.
Yeah, he had a lovely Fair Isle tank top when he came on with us.
Oh yeah. So he likes his knitwear. I'm thinking, have you ever noticed though with Bumble? I've noticed this. I was chatting to Graham Fowler and his wife about this. That he loves a good list. Does Bumble? So if you get him on commentary, he'll say, "Oh, look at them there, like they're at the beach. All sorts of things he can do at the beach, and there's paddling. There's making a sandcastle. There's sunbathing. There's sunbathing on a towel, sunbathing not on a towel. You can play cricket. You could play with a frisbee, and on it goes. And he segues from that into another list straight after. He says, "Oh, and there's a nice lad there wearing a wig. There's all sorts of things you can put in your hair these days. You've got toupees. You got your fully grown wig. You get a bald wig if you want. I mean, if that's really a wig." I'm considering doing a half-hour set of imagined Bumble, just never reaching the end of his point because he's just listing things. I was going to get a new car the other day. I thought I could get a Saab or a VW or maybe a Ford or a camper van. Could have got a camper van or a Winnebago. And on it goes. You listen out next time.
I'll have to come on appearing as Don Topley.
Well, we should send our best wishes to Don, shouldn't we? Because he's tweeted out that I think he's got the dreaded COVID, but I think
he's in the spare room.
He's in good spirits, though. He's in your spare room, is he?
Now you're taking zero ducks given on the road. You're making a live interactive experience of it, yeah?
We are. Odeon Leicester Square. Yes, there's a few. It's a bit of a vogue for podcasts. You should get into it, especially with your hair. I say your hair. Your hair is a pretty contrasting, Paul and Moots. But, Moots, for those who can't see, Moots has actually lost 20 years by growing a kind of grey mop top, which is genuine. I'm basically hugely jealous of it. The fact that I'm more like Paul and tonsorially challenged in the head.
We are. Darren and I are before and after the Clipper accident.
But so there's this organisation that puts together sort of theatre nights for podcasts, and we've got to work out what the hell we do, because I mean, it's, as I say, most of our listeners just expect chaos and mayhem. So I don't know. It's going to be recorded at 5 o'clock. So presumably you have to get on the sauce a little earlier than normal in order to provide that flavour of incoherent, rambling nonsense. But we will be announcing a guest at some point to the wider public, and that's on the 13th of November. I better get my dates right. Tickets are available from somewhere, a link. I'm the worst salesman in the world. That's why I left the job in the city, because I was rubbish at it. Basically, follow Zero Ducks Pod on Twitter, and all the details are in there. How you can come and watch me and Toby Tarrant and Stephen Finn and an as yet unnamed guest who will be stellar, talking for about an hour. Oh, you Moot. Yeah. I think you should just be the sport. You should just come on first. You know, a bit like how girls' school used to come on before Motorhead.
Yeah.
I don't know why I chose that analogy, genuinely. I think it might be the hair.
Am I sort of a pound shop Lemmy? Is that what you're saying?
Something like that.
Oh dear. Which reminds me, I must invite you next season up to Billericay Cricket Club, because we are naming the scorebox the Dan Norcross scorebox, after your spectacular appearance at Ravi Bopara's benefit game where the Taverners played the Essex 11.
No, the honour there is absolutely enormous, and I tell you, I'm now hard pressed to decide whether I'm more honoured by that or the promise I got from the departing Chief Executive Officer at the Oval, Richard Gould, who promised me that I would get an ashtray with my name on it placed next to a no smoking sign at the Oval. So an unusable ashtray. What do I want? An unusable ashtray at the Oval, or a very usable scorebox at Billericay? I think that Billericay might have tipped the scales, actually.
Well, it was a spectacular performance, winging it with yours truly when the rain was bucketing down and trying to get people not to leave the ground. But we got there in the end.
Yes, I remember. What a filthy day that was, wasn't it? And then the sun burst out as Ravi came and knocked 50 off 12 balls, wasn't it? Something absolutely insane.
That's right. And Reece Topley getting runs as well that day.
Yes, that is a red letter day, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, keen followers of Daniel Norcross on Twitter will know that away from cricket, podcasting and professional antics in the bar, will know that he's a massive fan and follower of Strictly Come Dancing. So with absolutely perfect timing, with Strictly about to start again, I thought we should really ask what your thoughts. I've got the lineup here. So the criticism so far has been who? So let me just run the names past and let me get your kind of views on how far they'll go, or even if you've heard of them. Well, I'll start with Tom Fletcher.
Who?
He was in. Now Webby's into boy bands. Was he in McFly or McBusted or?
He was in McFly, but I'm going to refute the accusation that I'm into boy bands. Absolutely disgraceful slur.
Right. Well, knowing now that he was in a boy band, I'm going to say now he's definitely going to make it to the quarterfinals. I'd say he feels like a tip for the final to me. Tom Fletcher. Never ever heard of him.
All right. Robert Webb.
Webby.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, he'll go a long way because he's got character and personality and charm, and he's also, people will know who he is. So I think you'll find that he's actually not too bad. He's already appeared. Didn't he appear in either Celebrity, Strictly, or I've seen him do a dance. I've seen him dance before.
I think he was in the Celebrity version of it. Yeah, you're right.
I think he was. And I think he did a rather marvellously camp number. He can sort of move. So he's got some moves. I think he'll definitely come unstuck in Rumba Week. That's going to be a tricky one for him. But if he gets Rumba Week early enough, then I think we might see him. Again, I'm tipping him for at least the quarterfinals.
Next one is, I thought at first it was an Irish girl, but no, she's of, I'm guessing, West African descent. AJ Odudu.
Yeah. Don't think I know AJ very well. Can you give me a bit more background?
I don't know. I think she's a presenter on something or other. Listeners will be screaming at the radio now, but
she's done a few presenting gigs. Big Brother's Bit on the Side, apparently.
She'll be good.
British Bake Off and Extra Slice, and The Voice. Would you believe?
Oh, right. Now she will be good. If she's a presenter, she'll be good. They go a long way after the younger presenters. I'm not talking about breakfast TV BBC presenters. They are usually, they've got two left feet. They're hopeless, but yeah, I think Big Brother's Bit on the Side. Everyone's getting to the quarterfinal at the moment. This is going to be a bit tricky. Yeah. Have we got any elderly men?
Well, you just mentioned breakfast TV presenters. Dan Walker is amongst the contestants.
Yeah, he'll survive 4 or 5 weeks. He'll show a fair bit of dedication, but I think he'll probably go out around about the Michael Vaughan slot about week 6.
Okay, your soap stars, Katie McGlynn, who was in Coronation Street.
Okay, she'll definitely have been to stage school. She'll have done all of these dances before the age of 13. She will get knocked out in the semi-final despite being too good by voters who think it's not fair that she's on the programme. But she'll sail through the first part of it, but she'll get knocked out just when really she should have won it.
Well, the other soap star is Nina Wadia, who was in EastEnders for a long time. And if you're old like me, you'll remember her from Goodness Gracious Me, which was a very funny sketch show in the 90s. I'm guessing she's kind of like the Bill Bailey contender, maybe?
I think that's more Robert Webb, really, is your Bill Bailey. I think what will happen with her, she might have a bit of a Sherry Lungy to start with, but I see her fading. I think she could be out by week 4.
Then you've got there's some proper athleticism here. You've got Adam Peaty and Hugo Monnier.
Okay, tricky one now, because Hugo Monnier is quite a thick set chap. So the problem he'll have is he'll be told by the judges all the time that he keeps sticking his bottom out, and he needs to stop scrunching his shoulders. And the thing is, he can't stop scrunching his shoulders because they're made of pure muscle. It's not that they can go down any further. He's a powerful man. And so that's something. And actually, Petey will struggle a little bit with that as well, because he's slightly, as a swimmer, he's got a very much of a V shape. So Craig Revel-Horwood will be talking a lot about his jutting arse, which it's just what we do in autumn, isn't it? Just listen to Craig Revel-Horwood complain about people's arses sticking out. I would think that if they get the chance, that one of them, because they're sportsmen, they tend to pick up stuff. If they can get through the rocky first 3 or 4 weeks and the humiliation of being told how bad they are by uncaring judges, one of them could go far. You don't tend to get 2 sports stars go all the way, but it'll be a choice of one or the other, because it's all about constituencies. On balance, I'll probably go with Petey, but I don't see him getting beyond the quarters.
Okay. The last 2 I'll chuck at you are Greg Wise and Tilly Ramsey, daughter of Gordon.
Whoa, now then. Now she's got, well, again, daughter of a chef. Does she do anything else?
I don't know.
No.
There's a fantastic quote that I've got in front of me here on the Telegraph page about where they're running down each one. They said, always keen to root out nepotism and promote those from underprivileged backgrounds, it's easy to see why Tilly Ramsey's riches to riches story would appeal to BBC execs. Say no more.
Yes, well, yes. Yes, now, what she'll probably need is a strong dose of likability factor, which she might have. I don't know her, so there's every chance. So I don't know where to put her. She could be out in week 2 or 3. I mean, actually, normally the first one to go out is an American, because people don't take to Americans. This is strictly, we don't get off our land. This is a British program for British people. Yeah, yes, exactly. So if she shows any signs of having a slight American twang, then she'll be out. And Greg Wise is a name I know. Why do I know Greg Wise?
I don't.
In The Crown.
Oh, is he?
Oh, from The Crown.
And he's married to Emma Thompson. There you go. That's him in a nutshell.
Oh, right. So he won't be young. So he'll have to put in quite a lot of hard work not to be. I mean, he could be a week 3 or maybe a week 7 or 8 is my guess, not having seen him or knowing really anything about him, but gauging from the fact that he's married to Emma Thompson and presuming that they don't have a 15-year age gap in his favour, I'm probably plumping for not going to go too far.
Well, I think questions should be answered and questions will be asked from 98 Not Out why there are no cricketers in it this year, because it's a happy hunting ground for cricketers, strictly, isn't it?
I think we established them. They've been quite busy enough this year.
Well, yes, it's true. But what have we had? We've had Swanee, Vorney, Gough, Ramps. I was hoping we were going to see a bit of Ishigua, but obviously with the Ashes coming up, that was highly unlikely, because she'll be.
Surely this is why Ben Stokes hasn't played any cricket. He's been gearing himself up for Strictly.
Hey, do you know? I'm amazed.
It's going to be a surprise last minute.
why had that not occurred to me until now?
It's obvious, isn't it?
It is actually. It is. It's yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, on that bombshell, you might have broken one of the most important pieces of news. I think one of the other problem for cricketers actually at the moment is on a non-serious note, but just a factual one. There aren't that many famous ex-cricketers because we've gone through this period where they were off the box from 2005 to 2020. So recognition of them is not so great. I mean, if you think Sue Redfern, the famous woman umpire, has been seen ubiquitously on free-to-air television this year because the BBC has shown a lot of women's cricket and she's been umpiring a lot of it. Alistair Cook, I think, had never been on free-to-air television in an illustrious 13-year Test career or 12-year Test career. So you've got to go back quite a bit. It would have to be the likes of sort of Freddie Flintoff, really. And I think he's probably got too much on his plate, you know. He's on every bloody program. I'm half expecting to see him speaking the news at 1. To be quite the thing. So I think we might have to wait a little bit for a few more cricketers to come through. But I'm fully expecting Chris Woakes to win it in about 4 years' time. That's my big tip for those of you who want to go out there, put a bet on Chris Woakes to win Strictly at some point. It's a bit like how people used to put a bet on their kid to play for England. You know what I mean?
Well, on that bombshell, I think we'll wind it up. But yes, Chris Woakes, get your money on now and have a little each way on Ben Stokes along the way as well. Dan, been an absolute pleasure to catch up. As always, looking very well. And so when can we hear you next on the radio then, Dan?
Well, I'll be doing the last 2 matches of the England Women's International Summer, which are on the 23rd and 26th of September. Their first one-day international begins today at the time of recording, and it has just begun. And there's 3 more before I come riding into town in Derby and in Canterbury for the last game of the season. And then there'll be odds and sods, there'll be bits of IPL and, of course, the World T20. That's the thing. I mean, the English cricket season ending, it's a very different feel, isn't it, from when, again, I keep harking back to when we were younger, but the NatWest Trophy final would end, wouldn't it, early September, and you'd think, oh, there's no cricket until whenever the tour starts. But actually, it's a kind of merry-go-round. It's not great for the fans because obviously they don't get to go and watch cricket for a while, but we're quite privileged, very privileged position. We get to go to the Oval and do off-tube commentary. In a box that gets colder and colder as the winter proceeds. At the beginning of this year, I did a game, Sri Lanka against England, when Root was scoring all those runs, and the snow was falling, and the windows were open because of COVID. And I'd have to start by saying, welcome to a gloriously hot day in Gaul. And Tuffers would walk in covered in snow. With 4 or 5 layers of clothing on, looking perishing at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we have those delights to look forward to. But we'll get through it. And hopefully, this time next year, we probably said that this time last year, didn't we? But hopefully, this time next year, we'll be able to put at least COVID restrictions aside and sort of have a little bit more certainty and rhythm back in our lives. Because I think that's the thing. Obviously, there's the tragedy of the illness for people, which can't be overstated. But for those people who have been fortunate enough to avoid the ravages of the disease itself, it's been the continued uncertainty about what's happening in their lives, and sport is as afflicted with that as any other areas of life. So we're all in it together. We've all just got to plough on, and one day we'll get a bit more rhythm back.
I've just got Boris Johnson on the phone, just asking if you would like to be a speechwriter for him.
Somebody needs to, don't they? I'm not sure I could ever quite come up with some of his most fantastic lines. He did a great one on levelling up, which was filled with some of the most extraordinary bits of faux Latin, and then the whiff waff of eternal justice. But
well, I know both you and I have got O-level Latin. I think you've got a bit further with your classics, but we can spot that a mile off.
Exactly.
But let's hope for a brighter future. And I'll tell you what, let's learn from the past. Let's try and look to a future which learns from the past, which all, there you go.
Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be lovely? Rather than repeating the mistakes of the present.
Let's get back to teams coming over and touring for 3 months or 4 months and gaps between tests, Sundays off, playing the counties along the way.
Oh, yeah, going to Arundel at the start of the season.
Oh.
Having a bit of time to enjoy the sights of York and Norwich and Liverpool in between time. You know, when all the Aussie cricketers used to go off and check out the Cavern Club or whatever it is, and you know, make a big deal out of it. That would be. It's not going to happen, but
those days are gone. Desmond Haynes jumping over the advertising hoarding to ask me and my school chums what was in our sandwich box, and when I said I've got a strawberry jam sandwich, he took the lot and gave half of them to Gordon Greenwich as they stood in the slips waiting for the ball to be changed.
I never knew that. He was a sandwich thief.
Yes.
Was it not enough that they were destroying England 5-0 without the fact they were taking the spectators' food from their very bellies?
There was a very bemused Graham Gooch stood in the middle, just trying to wonder what was going on.
I bet.
Oh dear. Right, I will wrap it up on that bombshell. More bombshells. Honestly, incredible. We need tin hats for this interview. But all the best for the season. All the best with Zero Ducks given, and we shall put the link across the bottom of the screen so people can buy tickets at www.somewhere.com. And
thank you.
And we'll catch up really soon.
Thank you, Moot. It's been a delight seeing you and Paul again. And all the very best. Keep up the good work. And hopefully we can catch up in the close season and have a little natter in a pub somewhere.
Splendid.